his whole being, the whole of apartheid. And respecting him would have meant respecting that whole body with his apartheid characteristics. So there it was. And of course, the authorities being the authorities, included even the father of Joe Matthews. One by one, they call us. We were not many at that time, between 300, 400 students only. To say, why had we absented ourselves from the ceremony that was expected to be held in honor of this gentleman? And we said, we don't identify with him. He is not one of us politically, one of us philosophically, one of us, even as we identify ourselves as sons of the soil, those born of African soil, he is not. Well, there it was. I too was privileged to be accepted to study at this university in 1950. At that time, this institution was regarded by Africans in Southern and Eastern Africa as Oxford or Harvard, that is, as their distinguished institution of higher learning. There were many of us from across the region and beyond who made up the student body. Here we were, young, energetic, strong-willed, and heavily involved in campus politics. We used to cross the Chumi River to hold our meetings, to go to Sandile Scope sometimes, to whisper to each other as to what had happened, and sit and analyze the international situation. Gandhi had left South Africa. He had gone to India. With Nehru, they had combined as leaders to lead the struggle through passive resistance, struggle for India's independence. If they could do that, why can we in Africa not do it? That is the nature of the discussions that went around. True, we went to our classes, we attended, we went to our laboratories, we were there, but outside we had the young leaders of the Youth League leading us and injecting it, infusing into us that Africa can only be liberated through sacrifice. Gandhi and Nehru did it through passive resistance. We could try resistance. If passive resistance could not succeed because the enemy has bullets, but even stones, we can use stones. But we can also, in due course, use the same bullets. And this, you see, this is what led to Umkhonto weSizwe. Well, at that time, not all of us were well schooled on the political situation across our continent. However, it was during this period that most of us became aware of the colonial yoke across our continent. It was through the education and mentoring at the university college that we started looking at the political situation in our various countries from an informed but critical perspective. The early 50s were a period of heightened political activity in this region. The apartheid regime was in its first phase of consolidating racist politics, aimed at dividing races and separating blacks and Asians from whites, as it sought the dominance of Afrikaners. This resulted in the creation of Bantustans, with African children now subjected to what was called Bantu education, Bantustan education. In my country at the same time, this was the formative period of the Federation of Rhodesia and Nyasaland, a racist federation created by the colonial settlers without the consent of the African majority. So while Malan and his nationalist party strove to hold back African political progress in South Africa, Prime Minister Godfrey Huggins and Roy Welensky sought to do the same in Central Africa. In all these maneuvers, the soul of colonialists was the same: to entrench white supremacy over the African. The Boers and Afrikaners argued that the Africans were not sufficiently developed. Huggins and Roy Welensky put it this way: that yes, we're the same people, whites and blacks, but our policy is that of horse and rider. To make progress, to move forward, cover space, distance, horse and rider must go together. But then who was to be the horse and who was to be the rider? That was the issue. And we were to be the horse, naturally, and they to be the rider. But when the horse is angered, you know what it does. During these challenging developments, the University of Hare became the cradle of nationalist movements on the continent in general, and Southern Africa in particular. The university played a critical role in shaping the political consciousness of young African nationalists, such as the late Oliver Tambo, Nelson Mandela, and others. Dumanokwe, who became the Secretary General, and alas, who passed on during his term office when he was out of the country in Zambia. Comrades and friends, it was during my days at this university that I fully became aware of the evils of settler colonialism. Oppression and segregation were at their peak in this country. Day after day we heard news of police brutality, mass demonstrations, and forced removals of black South Africans from their homes. This, in a way, galvanized our commitment to fight against all forms of oppression and injustice. Resistance to apartheid took firm root during the 1950s at this university. Ladies and gentlemen, Fort Hare University has thus produced great politicians and economists who have made significant contributions to the development of their country. I've mentioned Nelson Mandela and Dumanoke and others who fought tirelessly for the liberation of this country and sacrificed part of their lives, 27 years in jail, Robben Island. When Mandela came out and I visited, I went to Robben Island to see the place. You don't imprison a person for no reason, merely because he's black, merely because you prevent him from becoming unequal with you. And then you send him to prison for 27 years. I only went to prison for 11 years, which with nothing to count in relation to Mandela's imprisonment. But I know what it is to be in prison. And for all that, you also know that to imprison a person for no crime is a criminal act on your part. And that is why, as we became independent, we did not say to Ian Smith, you go to prison for 11 years. No. We said to him, let us now recognize that the act of independence has bestowed the same identity, political identity, on us. If you fought your struggle on the opposite side, we now cannot avoid each other. Independence has made us equal. We shall not revenge, and we shall pursue a policy of national reconciliation. And Ian Smith and myself used to talk to each other thereafter. He was a member of parliament. But I say to him, as long as you comply and you obey, fine. And yet it is one farm, we didn't take it away from him. His father died and he inherited it, and he had 2 farms. It was only then we said, fine, we will take one away from you. And we leave you with 1. And we left him with his own, right up to his death, just about 3 or 4 years ago. He died, I think he died here, and decided to be turned into ashes. So we did it. Mandela came out, and I saw him, met him, come to visit us, hand in hand with those who were, with the president who had allowed him to remain in prison. He did not revenge, but he said freedom must